There comes a time in every believer's life when we stand at the edge of the familiar, when the walls we've built around comfort and control begin to crumble. And in that moment, something rises from deep within, a cry that cannot be silenced. I want to tell you about the most dangerous prayer I have ever prayed. It wasn't dangerous because it defied God, but because it demanded everything of me. And I prayed, Lord, do with me whatever you want. Take everything. Let nothing remain that I cling to. And immediately, I felt the tremor of surrender. You see, the danger is not in asking God to move. It is in meaning it. Because once your heart opens that wide, the Spirit begins to stir. And you discover there are things in your life that have masqueraded as faith, but are nothing more than control. Things that feel comfortable, things that feel safe, suddenly become the very chains that hold you back from the fullness of God. And that prayer invited trials, yes, but it also invited revelation. It tore away pride, it shattered pretense, and it left me naked before God in a way I had never known. And in that nakedness, His power became real. I felt His presence so strongly, so intimately that every fear, every hesitation, every human limitation seemed to melt away. And the Spirit of God will meet you in that dangerous place if you dare to pray like this. But beware, beloved. It will cost you something. It may cost your comfort, your reputation, your plans. But it will give you what the world cannot give. A heart fully surrendered, a life fully alive, and a power beyond your imagination. And I tell you, the most dangerous prayer is also the most liberating. For when you say, Lord, take it all, you are not losing, you are finally finding the life God intended for you. And in that surrender, miracles are born. Surrendering completely to God is the most dangerous and yet the most powerful step a believer can take. To truly surrender means to release every ounce of control we cling to lay down our plans, our comfort zones, and even our expectations. It is dangerous because it demands courage, vulnerability, and a willingness to step into the unknown. Many people pray, but few are willing to pray with a heart wide open, ready for God to do as He wills, without reservation or hesitation. When we surrender completely, we place ourselves in a position where God can move without limits, where His power is not hindered by our fears or our insistence on understanding every detail. This kind of surrender is frightening because it strips away the illusion of safety that our routines and possessions give us. We discover that what we thought was secure is often a barrier to the fullness of God's work in our lives. It is in surrender that we meet God's presence in ways we never imagined, where the ordinary becomes extraordinary and the impossible becomes possible. Surrender is not a one-time event. It is a continual posture of the heart, a daily decision to trust God with every area of our lives, whether it is our relationships, our finances, our health, or our dreams. The power in surrender comes from recognizing that we are not the ones in control, that our strength is insufficient, and that God alone can accomplish what we cannot. As we let go, we allow the Spirit to lead, to guide, and to perform works that are beyond human comprehension. The danger is real, but so is the reward, for in surrendering fully, we position ourselves for the miraculous, the transformative, and the life-changing encounters that God longs to bring into our lives. And true spiritual breakthrough requires letting go of comfort, control, and human plans. Most of us live our lives clinging to what feels safe, predictable, and familiar. We create routines, we make plans, and we convince ourselves that we are in control. But these very things often become the chains that hold us back from experiencing the fullness of God. A breakthrough cannot come while we are holding on to the familiar, for God's ways are higher than our ways, and His plans often lead us into places we cannot yet see or understand. Letting go means stepping into uncertainty with faith, trusting that God's wisdom far surpasses our understanding and that His timing is perfect. It means releasing our desires for recognition, success, or comfort, and saying, "Oh Lord, I will follow you wherever you lead, even if it takes me into uncharted territory." This is not easy, for human nature resists surrender, but the Spirit calls us beyond the boundaries of our self-made cages. When we relinquish control, We open the door for God to move freely in our lives, to orchestrate events, and to position us for divine encounters. Comfort is often a trap, a subtle barrier that lulls us into complacency, and without discomfort, we rarely reach new heights in faith. Spiritual breakthrough comes when we stop relying on our own understanding and strategies, when we stop trying to manipulate outcomes, and when we step into complete dependence on God. Every major movement in our spiritual life requires leaving behind what is comfortable and stepping forward into the unknown with courage, knowing that God will guide our steps. Only in this place of total trust does the miraculous begin to unfold, and the ordinary transforms into the extraordinary, revealing the power and presence of God in ways we could never imagine. And the dangerous prayer exposes hidden pride, fear, and areas of bondage in our lives. When we pray with total surrender, we often discover that there are parts of our hearts we never knew were holding us back. These are the subtle areas of pride, the hidden fears, the attachments to things or people that we believe we can't live without. A dangerous prayer challenges us to bring every secret, every limitation, every hidden agenda into the light before God. It forces us to confront ourselves honestly, to acknowledge the ways we have clung to control, and to admit that without Him, we are powerless. Pride can disguise itself as righteousness, fear can hide behind faith, and bondage can masquerade as independence. But when we pray boldly, asking God to take full authority over our lives, the Spirit begins to uncover these hidden areas. It is uncomfortable, even painful, because we are faced with the truth of who we are apart from God and the things we have allowed to dominate our hearts. Yet, it is in this confrontation that freedom begins. The dangerous prayer strips away pretense and reveals our true condition, not to condemn us, but to prepare us for the miraculous work of God. The more we surrender, the more clearly the Spirit can point out what must be removed, healed, or transformed. It is in the uncovering that the chains begin to fall away and the soul becomes pliable, ready for God to shape and mold it according to His perfect will. Without such a prayer, we may never see the depth of our own limitations, the strongholds that hinder our faith, or the barriers that prevent us from experiencing God's fullness. This is why the most radical and risky prayers often lead to the deepest encounters with God, revealing both our weakness and His unstoppable power. And God's power is often revealed in the places where we feel most vulnerable and exposed. When life strips away our comfort, security, and self-sufficiency, we are forced to rely on Him in ways we never have before. Vulnerability is not weakness, it is the gateway through which God's strength flows into our lives. The Spirit of God moves most powerfully when there is nothing left for us to cling to, when our pride has been laid aside, and when we admit that we cannot navigate life's storms on our own. In those moments of exposure, when our plans have failed and our understanding is limited, God's presence becomes unmistakable. We begin to see miracles unfold in ways that defy logic, doors open that seemed impossible, and provision arrive exactly when it is needed. The process is not always easy, because being vulnerable requires courage, honesty, and a willingness to face our fears. Yet, it is precisely in that openness that God's glory shines brightest. He fills the spaces we cannot fill ourselves, He strengthens what is weak, and He lifts what is broken. The more exposed we become, the more room there is for His power to work. Many people resist vulnerability because it feels unsafe or uncomfortable. But God's greatest works often come when we let go of control and allow Him to move freely. To experience His power fully, we must stop hiding behind our defenses, our pride, or our routines, and instead step into the place where we are fully seen and fully surrendered. It is in these moments that God demonstrates His ability to transform fear into faith, weakness into strength, and ordinary circumstances into extraordinary testimonies. Vulnerability becomes the stage upon which the miraculous is performed and miracles are birthed when we pray with full surrender, even at great personal cost. When we offer God our hearts without reservation, when we lay down our desires, our plans, and even our comfort, We create the space for Him to work in ways that surpass human understanding. Miracles do not happen in half-hearted prayers or in timid attempts at faith. They arise when we dare to release everything into God's hands and trust Him completely. Often the cost is high. Perhaps it is the loss of security, the risk of rejection, or the fear of stepping into the unknown. Yet it is precisely in paying that cost, in giving up what we hold most dear, that God's supernatural power can flow unhindered. Full surrender allows the Spirit to intervene in our circumstances, to heal what is broken, to restore what has been lost, and to provide solutions where human wisdom fails. Many believers shy away from such prayers because they cannot see beyond the immediate sacrifice. But God asks us to look past the temporary loss and fix our eyes on His eternal purpose. Miracles are never just about changing a situation. They are about transforming hearts, revealing God's glory, and bringing lives into alignment with His perfect will. The process of surrender itself is refining, purifying our motives, and stripping away anything that would hinder God's work. When we pray in full surrender, we are acknowledging that we are vessels, instruments through which God's power can manifest. The greater the surrender, the more extraordinary the outcome, and the more undeniable the evidence of His presence. Miracles are born not out of human effort, but out of a willingness to step into the unknown, to trust without guarantee, and to yield entirely to the One who holds the universe in His hands. It is in these moments of complete surrender that God's power is made perfect, and the reward of dangerous prayer is not loss, but a life fully alive and filled with God's presence. Many fear surrender because they believe giving everything to God means losing something precious. But in reality, it is in surrender that we gain the most. When we pray with total abandon, asking God to take control of every area of our lives, we step into a dimension of faith where His presence becomes tangible and transformative. Life begins to shift in ways we never could have orchestrated on our own. The burdens that once weighed heavily on our hearts begin to lift, and a peace beyond understanding takes their place. Dangerous prayer strips away the distractions, the fears, and the illusions that keep us from walking in the fullness of God's purpose. It is a prayer that exposes our weakness so that His strength can shine through. A prayer that removes the ordinary so that the extraordinary can manifest. The life that emerges from such surrender is not measured by comfort or ease, but by intimacy with the Spirit, clarity of purpose, and a boldness that defies human limitation. We begin to see God's hand in every circumstance, to recognize His guidance in every decision, and to experience His provision in ways that surpass expectation. Others may see our lives and wonder at the transformation, but only we know the cost of surrender and the depth of God's work within us. The more we embrace dangerous prayer, the more we are drawn into a rhythm of faith that is alive, vibrant, and unstoppable. It is a life where fear is replaced by trust, hesitation is replaced by obedience, and emptiness is replaced by the overflowing presence of God. The ultimate reward is not merely what God does for us, but who we become in Him, fully surrendered and fully empowered to walk in His will.